All right, guys. So sorry about that delay. I'm gonna go ahead and start since I'm getting a late start on it, and I don't want you guys to miss out on what we're gonna cover today. So it's gonna take me just a minute as I'm getting set up here. Jump in as soon as you can. You join us, great. You can't join us, well, you can always watch it later. I'm gonna have to use the whiteboard for a bit today if I can't get my Mighty meeting started over here. Let me see if I can do that. There we go. I'm going to start a meeting. This makes it so that I can write stuff for you guys. And join that room over here. Okay, so just so you guys are aware, today we're going to talk about several different theories behind the business cycle, but I want to go over first kind of what the business cycle is, and then I should be able to share it with you guys on the video. Sorry, let me adjust that just a little bit. There we go. Okay. So last week we talked a little bit about economic systems, the difference between command economies or planned economies and what we call market economies. So our command economies, you're looking at socialism, fascism, you're looking at, I don't want to say communism because it's not really a command economy, okay? Where then on the other side you have a market economy, and that's clearly identified through capitalism. Capitalism is definitely a market economy. Now what we live in is mixed economies. In the United States we have a mixed economy. We are not a capitalist economy. We are a capitalist dominant economy, but we have pretty heavy fascist influences. And we have a lot of socialist category or socialist sentiment within our economy as well. But if you try and say, well, we're a capitalist system, no, sorry, we're not. Okay. So today I want to talk about how we measure the health and the strength of the economy and the role that government plays in overseeing these things. So as we look at this, we're going to look at the cyclical pattern that we see over and over and over again in the economy. And well, let me draw up for you real quickly. Let me share my screen here. And hopefully you'll be able to jump on and see this. Okay. So I'll share this screen with you now, and you should be able to see at least what I'm saying. So when I'm looking at how the economy goes, we tend to think that it goes in cycles. Okay. So if the economy is doing well, let's see if I can actually draw here. Okay. If the economy is doing well, we're going to say that we are in a state of prosperity. And you'll forgive my writing because I'm writing on my tablet. So that should be an O. Prosperity. Okay. And prosperity is measured by high employment. High employment. Yes, that's horrible writing, I understand. It's also characterized, sorry, that's the word I was looking for earlier. It's characterized by high employment, but prosperity is also, in theory, characterized by moderate to high inflation. Inflation, what's that? Well, inflation is where your money itself is losing purchasing power. Why does prosperity come with inflation? Well, we'll see. Okay, but employment is high, productivity is high. Generally, people are doing pretty well. Average median net income is usually pretty high during periods of prosperity. But what happens is we don't stay in this cycle of prosperity forever. As you guys have probably seen, the economy will sometimes take a dip. And when the economy takes a dip a little bit, we call that a recession. Now, there's a couple different definitions of a recession. But during a recession, what you're looking for is 2 or more quarters of slower than average growth. That doesn't mean that the economy is actually retracting necessarily, but slower than average growth. Now, how do we know? Okay, well, it's measured in GDP, gross domestic product. Yeah, that's not really a very accurate measure of the economy to begin with. So how can we use a recession, or how can we use 2 periods of decreasing GDP or slower than average growth in GDP to determine a recession? Well, it's kind of hard to define. But there's some pretty obvious characteristics that define a recession. And usually what you'll see is unemployment starts to rise. And what do we mean by unemployment? When unemployment means people who want to work who can't find jobs. People who want to work who aren't able to work. And during a recession, unemployment generally tends to go up. Median income will either stay stagnant or it will even sometimes go down. So how do we know that median income goes down? Well, because unemployment goes up. If you're not employed, you're not earning an income. So median income includes all those people, and oftentimes people who are employed, like we're seeing right now, people who are employed are working less and less hours. A lot of people are shifting to part-time work, not because that's what they want to do, but because that's what is available for them, or because that is what their employer is offering. If a recession gets really, really bad, we get to a point that we call depression. Oops. Okay. Sorry, you can't read that at all. That's ridiculous. But it says depression. Okay. And so in a society, in an economy where we're experiencing a depression, what generally happens is you're looking at very high unemployment. So high unemployment. Okay. Depressions are usually characterized by long downturns in the economy, where now we're not looking at 2 or 3 quarters. We're looking at 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 consecutive quarters where production is down, unemployment is down, unemployment goes up, employment goes down. Median take-home income definitely goes down. And then also what happens, because I forgot to mention this, during times of prosperity, tax revenues are pretty high. In recession, tax revenues will drop. And in a depression, tax revenues again, revenues are pretty darn low. Now, why are tax revenues low? Well, because people aren't working. If people aren't working, they're not paying taxes. So tax revenues go low. Thankfully, we don't stay in depression whenever we come back to a time where we see an expanding economy. And let's see if I can write on here. And the economy is expanding. There's expansion. So what we see is usually unemployment begins to shrink. So unemployment goes down. Sorry, that should be an arrow down. You also see activity starts to go up again. You see income starts to increase. You see tax revenues starting to go back up. This is measured by GDP, the gross domestic product, which is all the things that are made within the boundaries of the country. Sometimes we get slipped up and we say all the things that the country makes, but forgetting that the country is not synonymous with the government. It's not that the government makes any of these things, except for the tax revenues. They take your money, and that's tax revenues. But the government doesn't make GDP go up, even though government spending is a huge portion of GDP. We'll talk about this in just a second. But the idea here is that you get to this, your expansion is going to then lead you into a time of economic prosperity again. And you repeat the cycle over and over and over. Now, to try and simplify this as we talk about it, let me draw this again. So we've got, oops, let me draw this. We have got our prosperity. Now, prosperity can lead to recession, and recession can lead to depression, and depression, hopefully, when we come out of it, leads to expansion, which would then lead to prosperity. And as we look at this, okay, so this is pretty cyclical. What causes it? Well, this is something that people have talked about for a long time, and they argue about what causes this kind of boom and bust cycle in the economy. And this is where you get a couple different theories that come into play. And I want to talk to you about one in particular that is called the Austrian theory. This is Austrian business cycle theory. And it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the country of Austria. Rather, it has to do with its origins being with a series of economists who are very prominent economists in Austria, specifically Ludwig von Mises, Friedrich von Hayek, Eugene von Bauer, and a few other very prominent Austrian economists. Karl Menger, very prominent Austrian economists. Not all of them worked on Austrian business cycle theory. In fact, probably more people have worked on Austrian business cycle theory since these people have died than they were able to do at the time. But let me look at Austrian business cycle theory with you guys real quickly, and hopefully we can get into it a little bit, even though we've only got like 10 minutes left in class. Austrian business cycles theory says that interest rates, how much does it cost people to borrow money to operate a business, are kind of the driving factor. How much does it cost to borrow money? What is the capital return on people's investment when they loan out money to borrow? The idea being that when interest rates are high, people are going to not borrow as much money. What it tells them is that the price of borrowing money is very, very high, and it's very, very risky, and you should only borrow money if you are very certain that you'll be able to pay it back. And the only reason you're certain that you're going to be able to pay back the money that you borrow is if you know that your business is going to be a winning business model, which means that you have to be really, really sure of yourself. Okay, well, what happens if interest rates go low? When interest rates go too low, then the price of money is very cheap and people can borrow money without any guarantee that, not that they won't have to pay it back, but that they won't have to pay back more than they borrowed. So if I can borrow money, excuse me, at 0% interest, I have an incentive to borrow a lot of money. And then if I can invest it in this business or that business, and the business goes kaput, well, at least I can sell back my investments and pay back the money. So I can sell the factory, I can sell the car, I can sell the equipment that I bought, and I can sell those things back, and I can pay back the loan that I took out. And when interest rates are very, very low, you kind of see this quick, rapid expansion, ideally taking us to a period of prosperity. Now, this is what Hayek and several other Austrian economists called the boom. And they say that the boom is actually where you need to look as the cause for the bust. When interest rates are really low, then people borrow money for risky businesses or for risky investment proposals. And Hayek uses the term malinvestment, says that people invest in the wrong things. They make risky investments, they make dangerous investments because the cost of investing is so low. Okay. And we can see this. And in fact, we saw this in the 2008 housing bust. This is the boom turns into a bubble as people invest in things that they shouldn't really be investing in, and then the bubble bursts. And what does that do? Well, that's going to send us into a depression, unless we're able to come out of it very quickly. So the question is, who sets interest rates? Well, there's a couple different things. There's who should set interest rates, and who in our day and time does set interest rates. Interest rates could very easily be set by the market, meaning if I want to borrow money, I go and I shop around from people who have money, and I ask them, can I borrow money? And they will say, yes, you can borrow money, but I'm going to charge you 10% interest on this money. I'm going to charge you a return. You have to pay me more money in the future for borrowing the money now. That's what interest is. Well, some people are going to look at my business plan and say, that's kind of a shaky business plan. I'm going to charge you 50% interest. And someone else will say, well, I'll charge you 30% interest. And I can pick and choose among those what interest rate I'm willing to pay. But what's going to happen if other businesses hear from one guy over here saying, it's a very shady business, it's very risky, I'm going to charge them a 50% interest rate? Do you think they're going to be all kind-hearted and give me a very low interest rate? No, probably not. They're probably using the same criteria to determine what the interest rate should be. And so by using the same criteria, they're also going to charge me a very high interest rate. And that's the market setting the interest rate. Okay. Now, in our modern day, who actually does set interest rates? Interest rates are set, at least in part, by the Federal Reserve Bank. And I've got some very interesting videos with Professor Larry White, that I'll post up right as soon as class is over, because I've been slacking on that. Okay. And that within the Federal Reserve Bank, they set interest rates to drive a pretty steady inflation. The idea here is, can we steer the interest rate, or can we steer this cycle in the economy based on controlling whether the interest rates go up or down? And can we control those things, or do we let the market decide? Does the market naturally determine what the correct and appropriate interest rate should be? And what the question really comes down to is what Hayek called the knowledge problem. Oops. and it doesn't want to write for me here. Oops. Okay, well, let me start writing. The knowledge problem. And what Hayek says is, even if the people at the Federal Reserve, we'll call it the Fed for short, even if they did, if they were able to know within the economy what interest rate would be the right one, do they actually have the knowledge to know how people are going to react to whatever interest rate they set so that they actually get the results that they desired? And so the question here is, can we control, because this is what it really comes down to, oops, can we control the economy? Can we? Well, I'm going to argue that we can't control the economy, at least not as much as we like to think that we can. We're really running short on time because I got class started late today, but I'm going to put up some really cool videos. It's a Learn Liberty series. And again, I'm going to challenge you guys, if you don't have an account set up through Learn Liberty, set up an account, because you can earn points, and those points you can use to earn rewards later on. Okay. Now, I want to get back to something just real quick, because I know most of you kind of come from a similar religious background. And so I want to show you guys something real quick that hopefully you can take into your personal studies. I'm going to draw for you guys real quickly the pride cycle, or the business cycle, one more time. And I want you to tell me what it looks like. So here we have our period of prosperity. And in our time of prosperity, everyone's rich, everyone's happy, everyone's doing great. Something comes along and we run into a period of recession. And when we run into a period of recession, when we let that get really bad, that can turn into a period of depression. From our period of depression, we get into a period of economic expansion, and expansion ideally will get us back into a period of prosperity. Okay. And again, remember, the Austrian school says that this is driven by interest rates. Now, this might be something that sounds familiar from your scripture study, especially those of you who are LDS and use the Book of Mormon as something that you like to study. But this looks an awful lot like the pride cycle, doesn't it? When the people are humble, then they tend to experience some prosperity. And then when they start to experience their prosperity, they get lifted up into pride, which, if you guys didn't see, P-R-I-D-E, they get lifted up into their pride, and they then are compelled to be humble. And if they choose to humble themselves, great. Then they can kind of skip over this process of depression. They choose to be humble, and they go right back into a period of expansion or growth, or they start building back up again. They start to have trade, and they're building stuff, and they've got, cool clothes and fine linens and all kinds of gold and silver. And oh, wouldn't you know it, because they have all those things in this period of prosperity, they get prideful again, and they end up back down here in this recession. Okay, so guys, I'm going to post some really cool videos for you to watch. I'm going to post maybe 1 or 2 short reading assignments, mostly having to do with the Great Depression. So there's going to be a lot of history in this one as well, because economic cycles are something that we can see over and over and over again in history. All right, so sorry for being late to class today. I just let time get away from me, doing a few other things with my other classes and other things that I'm doing. So I'll wrap up here. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email, send me text message, voicemail, whatever. Okay, not voicemail. I don't respond to voicemail. Okay. But I'm going to put up some cool videos for you guys to watch, and I'll see you guys later.